Welcome to Saguache County Stories, a podcast of the Northern Saguache County Library District, where we explore the evolution and history of the land and people of the northern San Luis Valley of Colorado. I'm Sarah Kane Fry, the director of the Northern Saguache County Library District. In this episode, local resident Deb Skadberg shares her story on the theme of finding home. In Finding Home, folks talk about their housing journey in the San Luis Valley.
My name is Deb Skadberg. We live about a mile west of Saguache, and I am 69. My husband and I were both born and raised in North Dakota, and we were farming with his dad, and then we took over and were renting from his dad. And his dad decided to sell the farm, and unfortunately for us, we were not the highest bidder. So we were kind of out of a job. So my husband had always been into horses. He'd had horses since he was 6. And had always wanted to do a cross-country trip. So at that point, we had 4 kids who were 12, 8, 7, and 4. So the logistics of 6 people horseback going across country wasn't really feasible, taking along all your paraphernalia, all the gear you needed. So we actually built a wagon, and it was, people say a covered wagon, but it was really more of a gypsy wagon. Inside we had a little kitchen, we had 2 sets of cot bunk beds, and then we had a bed with storage underneath. So on the 12th of June in 1984, we took off from Carrington, from our place about 14 miles northeast or northwest of Carrington, North Dakota, heading for California. So we were heading west. Lots of parts of the story, but anyway, Montana was having a horrible drought that year. So we got to western North Dakota and we decided to turn and go south. So we went down kind of through the western side of North Dakota, ended up actually at Sturgis during Sturgis Rally Week, which was an interesting event. Came down the eastern side of Colorado down Highway 71, which if you've ever been down it is about as narrow a road as where it gets between Saguache and the center where it says road narrows. There's actually no shoulder. So we came down that far, turned at, I guess it would have been right around La Junta somewhere, and came west again. And we got as far as Del Norte, and it was blizzarding on Wolf Creek. So we kind of got stuck. And when we came into Del Norte, my husband had met a man. His name was Doug Jones. He was a horseshoer. And Tim, of course, had been shoeing our horses all summer long because we were, had 2 teams, 4 horses all the way, and had to have shoes because we were on asphalt. Anyway, he took over Doug Jones's horseshoeing business. And once we were staying in an area for a while, we ended up putting the kids into school. So we kind of just ended up in Del Norte. And about a year or so later, my husband and I both went to Adams State and got our teaching degrees. So that's kind of how we got here and ended up here. At that point, we weren't at Saguache. In fact, that was quite a bit later. When we both got teaching degrees, we went out to a little town close to Lyman, a little town called Agate. I taught 1st and 2nd grade. My husband taught shop. And then we came back to the valley. I taught in center for 3 years. And anyway, we ended up getting a job in South Fork. We worked for Elk Creek Ranch. We were the ranch managers. And when we stopped doing that, I guess there was a job opening here in Saguache, and I took the 6th grade teaching job in Saguache. And that was probably about 12 years ago. So that's kind of how we ended up a roundabout way in Saguache. We got here the very end of September. Our daughter's birthday is October 4th, and we got here just like maybe a week before her birthday. But it was a year, 1984, was a year that they had free skiing at Wolf Creek on Halloween because they had so much snow. I don't know if you remember, they had an amazing amount of snow by Halloween. So anyway, it was pretty cool. But taking a horse-drawn wagon over the mountains in a blizzard is not wise. If you asked any of our kids, our daughter was only 4, so she doesn't remember as much of it as the boys do. It was probably one of the best summers of their lives. It was neat. We'd be up and ready to go by about 8 in the morning. The 7 and 8-year-old were more into horses than the oldest boy was, so they'd have the horses brushed and harnessed and ready to go. And I swear we could find our trail back by Legos. They had Legos along and played with Legos all along the way. And I said, we could probably find Legos every place we stopped. That's when I saw the Lego over there. It was kind of funny. But anyway, it was great. We had 2, I guess what you would call negative instances. We had a lady who told us that she thought our horses were too skinny, and she definitely wasn't too skinny, and she was riding around in her car licking on an ice cream cone, so we weren't too worried about her. And then when we went through Sturgis, we had somebody on a motorcycle try to get close enough to whack the back end of our horses, and I guess they chickened out before the horses participated. But then right after we have something like that happen, there's all these Harley motorcycles coming by, and they idle back and they come by and they go, so they were just awesome. People invited us in, had us do laundry, take showers, gave us garden vegetables. One lady went home one evening and made our daughter, what are the dolls that were so popular right then? Anyway, she went home and made our daughter a homemade doll and had it back the next morning, so we'd have it when we took off. People were just phenomenal. It was very positive, the whole thing. I mean, to go all the way from North Dakota to Colorado and have 2 people that were just kind of quasi-negative, I thought was amazing. It was too hot to be inside during the day, So we had a seat up on the top where they could sit up on the top. We had butchered chickens the fall before we went, and we had butchered some beef. So I had canned all the chicken, so I had chicken that I could make, meals with. And then we had ice cream buckets full of jerky. So the kids would, grab a piece of jerky and climb up on top. And it was like, kind of the overland sort of Huck Finn story. I mean, the kids just, it was a great time for kids. We did have, I remember, we had spots along the way that we would get general delivery mail. And I remember we had mail go to Fort Morgan, and we didn't get anywhere near Fort Morgan because we turned at Brush and came south. So we had to kind of hitch a ride over and get our mail. But no, once we turned south from Montana, that was, our whole trip changed, our whole plans changed. But people would invite us to stay. We had our own, it was a solar-powered electric fence, so we would put that up and put the horses in so we could, stay alongside the road, or we could stay at a rest area, we could stay at a wine spot in the road. Probably the hardest thing for us in I think it was southern North Dakota. One day we had to go 40 miles to find water again. I mean, we carried water with us for the horses during the day, but we didn't have the capability of keeping multiple days worth. So we had to go from water to water. And that was the farthest we ever went, was 40 miles in one day. The only trouble we had, and I guess I don't know if you'd call them law enforcement, but we stayed in the Black Hills, and we talked to a gentleman, where can we stay? and he told us where to go, and so we took the wagon and the horses there and spent the night. And the next morning, a different gentleman came and said, "You can't stay here." He was going to charge us this huge fine for staying overnight. And we said, "Wait a minute," we talked to somebody, we got permission. So it ended up, the only thing we had to do was pack it in, pack it out. So we had 4 horses that we had to clean up all the manure from the last 24 hours and take it with us, because he was upset that we were where we were. But we did have permission. I mean, we didn't stay anywhere that was either private or, any place where it would offend anyone. If we had a chance to ask somebody, we certainly did. But it was a little bit looser, probably, time. There's quite a few newspaper articles. People would come out and interview us. Yeah, I'd say, it was fairly unusual. So people wanted to come out and find out why, or, what the reasoning was behind what we were doing. But it was basically kind of giving us a chance to find out what it was we were going to do next. So I want to say we started the trip with $600. And I have a little game that is kind of I guess it has to do with, it's like a trivia game for our whole family. And our daughter has a question in there. What did we come to Del Norte with? And she said 4 horses, 4 kids, and $40. And she probably wasn't far off. So, yeah, it wasn't, we didn't have any reason to spend money. I mean, and like I said, we had so many people bring us vegetables and, their garden stuff. It was just amazing. We didn't eat out, I'll say that, but nobody starved either. It's probably more important to feed the horses. Well, when we first got to Del Norte, we actually stayed in the wagon, but it started getting cold, and we found out, when you've got 6 people sleeping in a wooden wagon and it gets cold outside, you have a lot of condensation. So we were having, moisture in there. So we had to do something different. So Dan Anderson at the time had a place right north of Del Norte, and he had a trailer. So we stayed in that. And then my husband actually went to work for an outfitter, and it worked out really well. During hunting season, him and his wife were doing their outfitting business, and they had a son that was our daughter's age. And so we stayed at their house, took care of their livestock, took care of their son, and they went hunting. And then after that, we got a place in South Fork. We lived in South Fork first. Actually, Desi Medina, who was the sheriff in Rio Grande County at the time, bought it from us, and he used it as like a billboard, more or less. And it's our understanding that at some point his grandkids were playing in it and started a fire in it, and it burned up. So it is no more, but it was a little large to be lugging with us every time we, went somewhere, moved somewhere. I've got pictures of it, but probably 6 feet wide by, 12, 18 feet maybe. We actually built it in North Dakota. We had a friend that was a carpenter, and he had a shop, let us build it in his shop and use his tools and things. I don't know, my husband's always been able to build anything, so I guess we just kind of, probably accumulation of looking at different designs, kind of came up with it. I got the Captain Kangaroo door where the top of the door opens and the bottom of the door opens. That was the one thing I wanted. I also had a butcher block countertop, which was awesome. Yeah, the solar power was for the electric fence. Most of what we had was either canned or fresh. We didn't have a lot of cold things. Well, we had like a little, I don't know, like a camp stove, but we had an amazing summer weather-wise. I don't remember having to cook in very often, so we cooked outside. We just didn't really have that much trouble. When we got to southern North Dakota, we crossed the Mississippi, and I think the Missouri, and the day that we crossed it, it was like 121 degrees or something. So we stopped there, and the river was like bath water. I mean, the kids played in the river. It was just really, really too warm. But when we were going like right across the border, right before we crossed the border into South Dakota, we met some really nice people, and they invited us to come to their house, and we built a shade that went across the top, and so we could sit under the shade. And we never had, I suppose maybe we had a summer like we've had so far here. We just never had a lot of really hard rains. We could sit inside if we needed to, but I don't remember having any days where we stopped because of the weather. It was amazing, really amazing. We would stop about noon. Kids would have some chance to play and burn off some energy. It was good. Oh, wow. This was a time before cell phones. We didn't have, any way to communicate with, like, our families and things. I don't know if I would have changed anything as far as what I wish I would have known. We started off the trip way too heavy. In fact, we had a crash not even a half mile from home. And that's when we took out everything that weighed too much and we couldn't bring it along. I think if I would have done anything, I would have simplified even more. It's amazing what you don't need. It's kind of like when you go backpacking and you get back and you find out there's half of your backpack you never even got to, It's like all the things that you thought you had to have that you're amazed that you didn't need. So maybe simplifying a little bit more. A better way to maybe stay in contact with family and friends. I had lost my dad the spring of 84. My mom had an aneurysm the summer of 83, and so it was kind of a hard time for my mom. I think it would have been easier for her if we would have been able to be in closer contact. Kind of was what it was at that point. They all thought we were crazy. But it's so funny because pretty much my entire family still lives in North Dakota. I have one brother that's in Minnesota, but all my other siblings are still in North Dakota. Tim, there were 9 kids in Tim's family, so he has siblings in California and Arizona and Colorado. And they're a little more maybe empathetic, but we're so glad we ended up where we are. We just love the land of blue skies and sunshine. North Dakota, about November, it clouds up and stays cloudy till like May. It's just amazing the difference. So we love it here. We love the weather. We tell everybody we think we arrived in the banana belt coming from North Dakota. Yes, definitely. But don't overthink it. It is different now. My kids were 12, 8, 7, and 4, and now they're 50 and 46, 45, 42. It's definitely a different time period. We didn't worry about, vandalism or, some of the horrendous things that could possibly happen now. But for me, it just really restored my faith in people. They were so open and caring and giving. It was unbelievable. I don't know. If you had a chance, I'd say do it. But like I said, things are different now than they were. Okay, so when we came here, my husband and I were 30 and 33, and I think we were fearless. Obviously, set out to do something like that. We've talked about finishing the trip, going on over Wolf Creek, and he had a brother in San Diego at the time, and that's kind of where we were headed. And not to stay, but just to go see him, and we've driven that now, and there's no way I would take a wagon and 4 horses from here to California. I mean, I wouldn't do it. And, I don't know. Tim said something one day about, would we do this again? I'm like, maybe not. I think now there'd be more obstacles. It'd be, we're a little less fearless. We'd be a little more leery of, like I said, being alone, out in the middle of nowhere. At least now I guess we'd have cell phones, but I'm glad we did it when we did it. But it's kind of like we went to Sturgis once. Okay, been there, done that. It's just I don't feel a need to do it again.
You've been listening to Saguache County Stories. Thank you to our guest Deb Skadberg for sharing her story. This podcast is made possible in part through a generous Saguache County sales tax grant. Music created by Lydia Schultz-Sprouts and Rob Treefort with Golden Turtle Sound. Concept development by Maureen Ike Van Walligen with Dusty Dog Films, along with the staff of the Northern Saguache County Library District. If you would like to share your story or have questions, email Eden at edenelderberry@nsclibrarydistrict.org or call the Saguache Public Library at 719-655-2551. For new episodes, to read our blog, or to watch our YouTube channel, check out the Northern Saguache County Library District website, nscld.colibraries.org.